would take that in and consider it as if the salvation of the world depended on what I had just said. So, oh, Felice, that's good. That's good. Mama, did you know that about Nepal? Mama, at the other end of the table, about that point in the meal, would have sliced some fruit, and she'd be sort of dragging it through the last of her wine, something she enjoyed at the end of a meal. Nepal? No, Papa. I did not know that about Nepal. Papa, I do not know where in God's earth Nepal is. Papa would laugh. Felice, get the atlas. And I got up and I ran to the den and I got the atlas and brought it back. And already Mama and Papa were up. And with my brother and my two sisters, they cleared one end of the table so we could open the atlas. Remember how big atlases were? We opened it up. And all of us would begin the search for Nepal. When we'd found Nepal, and we'd all read that little block that tells you about Nepal, then the atlas could be put away. And then it'd be time for the next child to be asked, what did you learn today? And Mama and Papa answered the question too. So no meal at our house ever ended without us being enlightened by 6 such experiences, 6 facts being brought forward and shared in the family. Now, as children, I've got to tell you, we thought it was crazy. We could hear the other children out in the street playing a raucous game of kick the can, and we wanted to be out there. But we would never have even considered not doing what Papa had asked. Sometimes we would be at the table for just a few minutes. It would go very quickly. But other times we were there for over an hour. And we didn't realize, we really didn't know at that time what a gift we were being given. By our spending all that time together, we were growing together. We were being a part of each other's education. And Papa, by looking at us the way he did, listening to us, honoring what we said, he gave each one of us a real sense of dignity. Papa was giving us an education we couldn't have gotten any other way. He said to us many times, how long we live is limited, but how much we learn isn't. What we learn is what we become. I remember Papa. I remember him at the table. I remember how close our family grew together. When I went to university, I decided fairly early on to become a professor. And once I became a professor, I was nervous. The first time I got in front of those big classes at University of Southern California, 300 people in the class. And I knew these were brilliant young people. But still, I saw them making mistakes. Foolishness. Coming to class, clearly having partied all night. Sometimes still hungover. And I watched them do these different things that I knew weren't helpful for the way they wanted to live. And yet, what really changed my world was when one of my young students died by suicide. And that tore me apart. And that's when I decided my life had to change. And I went to the deans at USC, and they were quite surprised when I went in, and I said, I want to teach a new class. I want to teach a class about life. I want to teach these children, these young students, how to live. We're teaching them about everything except how to live. We've got to change this. The deans were all for it, as long as it didn't cost the university anything more than the use of a room. So I created a course called Love 101. And people say I taught it. I didn't teach it. No, I led it. And everybody that came, and it was small at first, just 20 people. But everybody was invited to talk, and what they realized quickly is the conversations would be steered so that everybody could share anything that was giving them a challenge. And in our talks, we found out that we weren't alone. Other people shared the same challenges. I urge them, don't think about forever. Pay attention to now, to the present, and forever will take care of itself. Well, through teaching that class, when Leo taught Love 101, the word got out, and after that, every time he offered it, it filled. His books were on the bestseller lists. He was suddenly being asked to speak all over the world. And what people wanted to hear about is what he loved to teach. Love. How to be present in this world. How to give yourself to others. Leo said once, sometimes now that I'm older, I get home from a long working day's adventure, and I'm tired. Sometimes I'll just put my briefcase down in the living room, maybe in the kitchen, and I head upstairs to bed without any supper. And when my head hits the pillow, just before I go to sleep, I'll see the face of my dear departed Papa. And he will look at me and he will say, Felice, what did you learn today? There are days I realize I have not learned a thing. I turn the light back on. I throw the covers back. I get out of bed and go to the bookshelf. And I sit on the edge of the bed with my reading light. And I read until I have learned something new. Then I put the book away. And I lay back down knowing that now Papa and I can both have a sound night's sleep, knowing that I have not wasted the day. I learned something new. Papa said, we are all born into this world ignorant. It's not our fault. But if we leave it the same way, that is our fault. I just wanted to share with you some of my fond recollections of Leo and some of his words. Because when I've watched his videos, when I've read his books, it's like waves of inspiration for me. And they lift me up. And I'm hoping those waves of inspiration may have reached you also. And I hope maybe Leo is somewhere looking and maybe saying, oh, questo è carino. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Thank you. We are going to take an intermission, and let's see, there is one restroom here that can be used during intermission. Gretchen told you about the other two, one upstairs and one through the instrument room. As you go back, if you go through that area, in the hallway, there are displays that tie into different stories, some which you have not heard, that you will hear later tonight, including some like wristbands that say "You matter" or "Don't give up." There's buttons, and if you'd like to take them, please do. There are some more of these out there. We just want to get these out everywhere we can. Celebration will be the third Saturday in November. Our shows are usually the second. We'll be on the 18th. There will be 6 tellers that night. And Celebration, so you know, is a worldwide celebration of storytelling. The events will travel all around the world. And we're happy to be doing ours right here at Artichoke Cafe. There's also some posters there, so if you have a place you could put up a poster to help us advertise it, please take one. So we'll see you in 10 minutes. And please enjoy using the bar. Thank you very much.
story.
And the house.
Separated from what they did.
Oh yeah, like when coming down from my office, I was coming down to I said, good morning, this is my
On page 2, on page 1, it says tickets. If you go to page 2, it says drive. It pushes you over the top. It pushes you to $2. So in this show, 4 people talk about drive. And 6 people talk about drive. And the board judgment was and it was like, I did story, well, my drive story and so it was almost as if and I followed it. This is like a real show.
Just to give you an idea.
Hello, hello. Take your seats, please. Did you get some good drinks? Good snacks? Gave good tips? Yes! You have fulfilled your gift. The spirit of the woods is happy for you. Wasn't that a great first half from PG, JA, and KI? Thank you. I have a confession. This is going to come as a shock. When I was in junior high and high school, I was not a cheerleader. I know. I've got the whole vibe, don't I? But I have to say, do I have pom-poms for Portland Storytellers Guild? Yes. You will see these Telebration flyers around, and on the back are some wonderful bullet points of Portland Storytellers Guild. Let me just run through them very quickly. Monthly performances right here on the platform at Cafe Artichoke. Yes, we're having one right now. It's great. We will have our next one in November, the third weekend in November, right there. Story swaps and potlucks. All of the information is here, but if you want to try your hand at some storytelling, your hand, your voice, your phone that's turned off, whatever it is, give it a try. Come to one of our swaps and potlucks. All the information is here. We have extra Zoom shows once a month. The next one is November 11th with our wonderful Ingrid Nixon. Many of us know Ingrid. Let's give it up for Ingrid. I-N. And finally, we always end our wonderful season with the Sarah Hauser Festival of Stories, which is always a treat. That is in June. Hope to see everyone back. There's a hat right there with treasures inside. And I get to pick a name. Irish luck. Patrick, yours isn't in there, but we'll see who we get. Nikki Agar? Stand up, Nikki! Yay! Did I get your name right? Yes! N-E. Awesome. Nikki, we will be in touch with you. We hope to see you in November. I'll be looking for you. Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's get on to the second half of our show. And welcome back, K.I., Ken Iverson.
Jim Smith was a student at Portland State University. He was thrilled when he realized his schedule was going to open. He'd have a few days off from both school and work. He thought, I'm going to go home and see my folks. He had been raised on a farm just outside of Estacada, about 30 miles from Portland. He loved living in Portland, but he longed to be back on the farm where he'd been raised. He thought, this is perfect. It's Halloween. Mom and Dad don't know I'm coming. Maybe I can sneak up with some trick-or-treaters and surprise them. He thought about how to get out to Estacada because it was in the afternoon already. He said, well, if I take the bus, it'll take forever, and it'll let me off miles from our farm. I'll hitchhike. So he headed out the door and looked up and thought, Portland. Went back in, got his rain hat and a long coat, headed out and stood over by the Morrison Bridge with his thumb out, and a car pulled over right away, picked him up. He said, well, I'm going to Estacada. Guess I can get you almost halfway there. And that first ride took him across the Morrison Bridge, down 99, all the way into Oregon City, onto Redland Road, and The man was driving along, and Jim thought, this could be my fastest trip home ever. The man got to Greedy Goat Farm. That has special meaning for a few. Pulled right in and said, well, good luck. Jim got out of the car and shut the door and watched the driver head up the driveway, and the electric gate closed behind him. Right then, Jim felt the first few drops of rain. Well, so much for getting home dry. But he looked at where he'd been let off, and, well, if you've ever been out to Greedy Goat Farm, you know there's no lights out there. He thought, this is not a good spot. The rain started coming down even harder, and Jim looked around. There wasn't even a tree to hide under. He waited. A car came. The rain came too, harder and harder. And when Jim saw that car, he was waving. But the car just, boom. Next car, same thing. He'd hold out his thumb. He'd wave first. When it got close like this, and boom. He thought, well, either they're not seeing me because his raincoat was dark, no lights. He's either they're not seeing me or they don't want to pick up somebody who's getting soaking wet here. He waited for a long time. And finally, another car started coming, and so did the rain. Sky opened up, and he watched that car, and he started waving way in advance. He thought, how slow can a car go? He watched. That car was just barely coming toward him. He waited, and it got closer, and when it got closer, that's when the sky opened up and torrents of rain came down. And he was looking, trying to see through the rain to see the car. It was still coming, but so slow. And he was waving and waving. He even got out on the road a little bit. And he said, I don't even know if he sees me in his headlights. But the car was going so slow, it did not appear to be stopping. Jim said, I cannot stay here and get any wetter. He was looking, and he surprised himself by running right out to the car. It was going so slow he could keep up with it, and he knocked on the door, the passenger side window. He knocked on it. The window didn't lower. To his surprise, he reached down and just yanked the door open. And when he looked in the car and saw the passenger seat empty, he just jumped in. He slammed the door and said, oh, I'm sorry. I know I'm soaking wet. I'm sorry to get your seat wet. I'm sorry. I just couldn't stay in that rain another minute. Hey, I'm Jim. There was no one driving the car, but it was still going down the road. You want to talk? Apparently ghosts don't talk. He said, it's got to be a ghost. I've never seen one. I'm not seeing one now, but he started wondering, what would a ghost feel like? That'd be rude. He had touched it, and he didn't like it. It felt like death, cold, lifeless. Jim didn't want to stay in that car another moment. But right then, through the rain and the headlights and everything, he could see neon ahead, and he knew what it was. It was a sign for Kissin' Kate's Saloon. He had stopped there on the way home before. He threw the car door open, he jumped out, and he ran down the road. He didn't even close the door. He just ran. His shoes were already soaking, but he ran. He got to Kissin' Kate's, he threw the door open. He charged in and went up to the bar, put his hand down and says, give me 2 shots of anything. The barkeep looked at him, poured him a couple shots, and Jim took one, and he took the other one, realized he was shaking so bad he couldn't drink it. He put it down. The barkeep looked at him and says, "What's happened to you? What's wrong?" He said, I was hitchhiking. I was picked up by a ghost car. I don't mean one driven by somebody in a ghost costume because it's Halloween. There was no one in the driver's seat. It was a ghost. That car was moving so slow, I should have known. I should never have gotten in. I know better. He says, "Well, calm down. You're safe here." Safe? Safe? You think I'm safe here? Why do you think I'm safe here? That slow-moving car is headed this way. The barkeep got out from around the bar, ran over, pulled the curtain back, and through the rain, he could see those slow-moving headlights coming their way. He ran over and flipped the switch for the outside sign and turned it off. He said, "Let's just hope they drive right on." Everyone in the bar could hear the tires turning onto the gravel of the parking lot. The car came right up by the front door and stopped. The barkeep got back behind the bar. He said, "Everybody just be calm." The door opened. 2 large figures came in. They stood in the darkened doorway. They had hats with wide brims. They had long raincoats with water just gushing off of their clothes. Because they're in the dark, nobody could tell, what they look like or if they even had faces. But they could tell they were looking around the bar. And one of them nudged the other. "That's him. That's him." And they walked over and stood, one on either side of Jim, who was just looking down and whimpering kind of loud. And one of them took his finger and says, "You're the one. You're the one." And the one on the other side said, "Yeah, you're the one." "Jim, I'm the one what? What?" "You're the fella that jumped into the car we were pushing through the rain. A little help would have been appreciated." Thank you. Happy Halloween. Please welcome Patrick Gannon.
This thing is a little strange here. All right. Okay, there we go. Well, thank you so much, Ken. From now on, he should call the lift company to give him a ride. Is that doing that? Yeah. Okay. If you travel to the southern coast of Ireland and go to County Cork, you will have the opportunity to see a very unusual sculpture. And this sculpture was designed as a monument. It consists of 9 eagle feathers, 20 feet tall. These eagle feathers are metallic and silver in color. They are arranged in the form of a circle and have the shape of a bow. This monument is called Kindred Spirits, and it is meant to honor the Choctaw Native Americans of Oklahoma, U.S. Now, you may wonder, what's a monument to a Native American tribe doing way over in County Cork, Ireland? This monument has 2 functions. First of all, it is to help the Irish remember how the Choctaw Native Americans came to their aid many years ago. Its other function is to help the world remember that the Choctaw continued to provide aid both internationally and nationally. Well, and for example, even in the 21st century alone, there are many examples of where the Choctaw are reaching out. For our 9/11 tragedy, the Choctaw set up a relief fund for the families of the firefighters who died in the Twin Towers. In 2004, there was a horrible tsunami in Malaysia that killed thousands and left thousands more homeless. The Choctaw set up a relief fund for the people of Malaysia. In 2004, during Hurricane Katrina, the Choctaw set up a relief fund and volunteers to travel to their ancestral Mississippi homeland. And there they distributed food and supplies to people in need. And later, for Hurricane Sandy, they set up a relief fund and sent volunteers all the way to New Jersey from Oklahoma. Well, this kind of begs the question, what is it about the Choctaw spirit that encourages them to reach out to large groups of people in need? Well, perhaps the answer to that question can be found in a tragic episode in their history, the Trail of Tears. In 1830, the Choctaw were happily living in their ancestral Mississippi homeland, which they called Mississippi, which means older than time. They were living as subsistence farmers. The soil was very rich, and there were plenty of trees to provide shade and firewood for their shelters. And the swamplands was a very integral part of their culture. They had long been conquered by the U.S. the government, but they decided to let the Choctaw live in Mississippi. But that same year in 1830, President Andrew Jackson issued an executive order called the Indian Removal Act. This would force all the Native Americans from states like Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi. They had to vacate their homeland and walk all the way to Oklahoma. Not only did it affect the Choctaw, but some of the larger Native American nations like the Cherokee and the Seminole were forced to leave. Now, for the Choctaw, they had to walk 500 miles during the winter of 1830 to 1831. And usually when we think of the winter weather in the southeastern United States, well, it's relatively mild. But that winter was especially cold and with several snowstorms. One survivor of that walk said the snow was swirling and was so thick, I couldn't see the people in front of me. I had to look down and follow the bloody footprints in the snow. It is estimated that of the 17,000 Choctaw, that up to half of them perished on the Trail of Tears. They died from exposure, malnutrition, and disease. And when they got to Oklahoma, they found the soil wasn't as fertile, and there weren't as many trees. And there were no swamplands. But the Choctaw not only adapted, in the following years, they began to thrive. 17 years later, in 1847, the Choctaw elders were meeting, and they learned about something way over across the Atlantic Ocean called the Irish potato famine. They learned that the Irish had been conquered and ruled by the English for over 200 years. And one of their laws that the English imposed was called a penal law, where no Irishman could own land in his own country. And it was divided up into 6,000 absentee landowners, mostly in the London area. These landowners hired English middlemen to manage their estate and collect taxes from the peasant Irish farmers. Well, for the southern and the western part of Ireland, they paid their taxes in the form of potatoes, and what was left over was their primary source of food. But in 1845, a blight appeared on the eastern shore of Ireland and slowly moved eastward. This blight affected the potatoes and turned them into a black mush. Well, the potato farmers, not only could they not pay their taxes because their crops were ruined, but their primary source of food was gone. The English middlemen, with the help of the occupying English army, forced these farmers out onto the roadways, where they began to starve by the hundreds of thousands. The English Parliament met and they said, how do we solve what they called the Irish problem? It was decided that they would activate former slave sailing ships that they had used to transport blacks from Africa into the New World. They would force these wandering Irish into the coastal cities, and they would be loaded onto these ships and then sent to places like New York City, Boston, and parts of Canada. The English sea captains were paid by the head, so they were motivated to cram as many of the Irish into the holds as possible. Well, these Irish were not only weakened by their hunger and the march, but now when they were crammed into these holds, now they were subject to respiratory and GI diseases. And then when they were sent to the New World, it is estimated that so many of these Irish perished that these ships are called coffin ships. And approximately for this 5-year period, 1 million of Irish starved to death and 1 million were sent to the New World. When the Choctaw elders heard about this, they said, these Irish are going through what we went through on the Trail of Tears. They were conquered by a foreign power. They endured tremendous suffering, and then they were forced to walk and sent to a foreign land. We need to help these Irish. And so the Choctaw decided that they would set up a fund, and they collected $170. And they sent it to a relief agency in New York City. This agency converted this $170 into food and blankets, and they sent representatives to the Irish who were walking to the coastal cities in the western and the southern part. Now, our first inclination to think, well, $170, it's a nice thought, but it's not a whole lot of money. Well, that was 1847 currency. It is estimated that $170 could have fed the entire Choctaw Nation for 3 weeks. $1 bought 3 blankets. Well, this outreach of the Choctaw towards the Irish has special meaning for me because I, Patrick Stephen Gannon, am the direct descendant of the Famine Irish. In 1847, my great-great-great-great-grandparents, Patrick Sean Gannon and Anna O'Malley Gannon, were Irish potato farmers in County Mayo, which is in the northwestern part of Ireland. In that same year, the blight had reached County Mayo, and Patrick and Anna were forced from their farms, and they had to walk 50 miles south to the port city of Galway, where they were loaded onto a coffin ship and set sail to New York City. Well, that was in the summer of 47, where the Choctaws started that fund in March of 47. I don't know if the food and the blankets ever reached my ancestors. But obviously, Patrick and Anna survived the walk and the voyage to New York City, because if they hadn't survived, well, you wouldn't be hearing this story. Well, many years passed, but the Irish never forgot this kind act of compassion by the Choctaw. In 1990, they decided to have a commemorative 20-mile walk in County Mayo, since that was one of the counties most affected by the potato famine. And so they invited the Choctaw to travel over and join them, and they raised funds to help with the travel expenses. And sure enough, 10 Choctaw traveled all the way over, and they walked that 20 miles with their new Irish friends. Well, the organizers had arranged for a week-long tour of the Western Ireland with the Choctaw. And at several towns, a feast was held, and the Choctaw were introduced as, these folks are the Choctaw. They came to the aid of our ancestors during Angorta Mór. And the phrase Angorta Mór is Gaelic for the Great Hunger. Well, 2 years later, in 92, the Choctaw said, well, let's have a 21 commemorative walk to mark the Trail of Tears. And they invited the Irish to come over to Oklahoma. And sure enough, this time, 20 of Irish traveled to Oklahoma. Consistent with their giving nature, the Choctaw used this walk as a fundraiser for famine relief funds in Africa. 3 years later, in 1995, the president of the Republic of Ireland was Mary Robinson. She mused that, Ireland has never really done a formal thank you. So she traveled across the ocean to Oklahoma and brought 3 of the cooks, Irish cooks, with her. And they arranged a huge feast that fed 500 tribal members. And all this food was traditional Irish food. And the most symbolic food of all was served: potatoes. And after this speech, she gave an impassioned speech of gratitude. She said it was just remarkable how way back in 1847, how your ancestors felt enough to reach out to the Irish. We were a separate race, a separate culture, separate religion, separate language, and yet you reached out and helped us. She cited a half another examples where the Choctaw are continuing this practice in modern times. And she wondered aloud, what would this world be like if more nations of the world would just act like the Choctaw? Then she repeated her speech 3 times. First, she said it in English, then she said it in Gaelic, and then she said it in Choctaw. First, please come to visit us. Thank you. Then, Tur Arquat Ludaho, Guru Mathagat, Antes Papi Sachaki, Yokoki. In 2019, the new president of the Republic of Ireland traveled to Oklahoma, and he set up a scholarship fund for Choctaw youth who wish to travel and spend a semester studying at the university in Cork. So 2 Choctaw youths are selected every year to travel to Cork, and that continues to this very day. During the COVID-19 epidemic, in the first year, 2020, the Irish reached out to the Choctaw elders and says, "How are you folks doing? Is there any way we can help you?" And the elders said, "Well, thank you. COVID-19 has affected us, but we're managing. But we're really concerned about the Navajo and the Hopi tribes in Arizona. They're lacking the funds to buy PPEs, or personal protective equipment, like gowns, masks, and gloves. Also, they need funds to provide the ventilators for the patients who really need help in breathing. Can you do something for the Navajo and the Hopi?" There was yes, we can do that. And they set up a GoFundMe account. And the Irish raised 4 million euros that they sent to the Navajo and the Hopi for PPEs and ventilator machines. And so the bond between the Choctaw and the Irish continues to this very day. Because as Mary Robinson said, if only more countries would act like the Choctaw, this world would be a better place. Okay. Thank you. Guru Mathagat Yakoki. Okay. And for our last teller today, please welcome Janice Alexander.
Okay, here we go. How's that? Good. Okay? All right. Trouble in mind, I'm blue, but I won't be blue always, 'cause the sun's gonna shine in my back door someday. Everybody gets down sometimes. And even a positive change can be a challenge sometimes. A little unexpected encouragement can go a long way. The first time I saw the sign, white background, big black letters, I was driving down River Street in Newburgh, the little town where I live. And there it was. It was in the grass in the parking strip. It looked like a political yard sign, but it only had 3 words on it. Don't give up. I thought, don't give up? What's that about? Well, every time I went down River Street, I saw that sign. And every time I went past, I couldn't help but read it. Don't give up. I actually kind of began looking for the sign as I went down the street. I was on my way to a community center classes. That's why I was going down there. And I asked some of the women in my class, I said, you know that sign, that don't give up? Have you seen it? What is it? What's it about? They didn't know. Except one woman said, well, you know, I saw that sign in a neighboring town at the top of my jogging route. Don't give up. Well, one day I'm driving down River Street and I look for the sign. My sign was gone. And this, no, there it was. It was down in the next block on the other side of the street. Okay. So now that I was really more focused on the sign, I began to see signs in other streets all around town with other messages on them. Oh, I forgot to tell you. That first time when it moved down the other side of the street, that was the first time I ever saw the other side of the sign. And that sign, it said, you are not alone. It's like, I liked that. So when I started seeing these other signs with messages on them, they were things like, you matter. Your mistakes do not define you. You are worthy of love. You're not alone. And always on the other side, don't give up. Well, I was seeing these signs as I went through my daily life, and they were starting to have an effect on me. And every time I saw my favorite, why, I'd say it right out loud. Don't give up, yeah! In the privacy of my car. But I began to feel like I really wanted to thank somebody. The people who were putting out the signs, but the signs even seemed to be moving around town, and I didn't know who to thank. So I did some research. I found a Don't Give Up Signs Movement website and Facebook page. I found out who was doing it, and I found out why. It turned out that in 2017, my little town of Newburgh was deeply shaken by 6 suicides during the school year. And then the newspaper reported 6 attempts in just 2 weeks. The officials were rushing to put together community education and support for students. But one young mother in Newburgh, Amy Wolf, she felt compelled to do something to address the tragedy. Under those circumstances, she said, you don't do nothing. So she got together with a friend and developed the idea of putting encouraging sayings on yard signs. She and her friend designed the signs and got 20 signs printed. Then Amy Wolf and her family went out into the neighborhoods, especially around the high school, And they asked people if they would be willing to have a sign in their yard. People liked the signs. Soon there were requests for more signs, even from some other towns. And people who had signs in their yards, they began to share about notes left and strangers who sought them out to tell them what effect those encouraging sayings had had on them. In 2020, on the Facebook page, I found several posts. One was, it was a note that had been left. The person said, oh no, I'm sorry. What it was on the post, I'm sorry, I got mixed up with another one. The post was, this person said, a woman just came to my door, knocked on my door. She said, thank you, and began crying. It turned out that her son had attempted suicide, and they were taking him home from the hospital when they saw the signs in my yard. So the effect on her, she drives past them daily, and the effect on her and her son and her daughter has been profound. Another person described receiving a note that was addressed to the people who put out the Don't Give Up signs. Dear neighbor, as I go to and from my cancer treatments, I see your signs, and they remind me to persevere and that I am not alone. Thank you. Happy New Year. A grateful passerby. Another man posted that he had seen the signs on his way home from work. He'd seen a sign, and he pulled over to the side of the road, and he wept. And then he went home, and he told his family that he had been hiding a deep depression, and he needed to seek help. Amy Wolf said that she thinks the signs are so effective because they don't try to fix anything, and they don't pretend to know what people are dealing with. Instead, each person sees that saying, and they take what it means to them for themselves, and they claim that hope. The Don't Give Up Science movement had become a movement of unconditional encouragement. She had decided to sell the signs at cost and not to advertise, but just to let it grow as it would. And it did. And so they began to also produce, in addition to the signs, buttons, decals, and wristbands that had the sayings on them. One woman in 2020, she wrote that she had gone through a car wash, and the guy who taped down her windshield wiper in the back commented on her Don't Give Up decal. She told him about the Don't Give Up signs movement and what it was about. And then he said, you know, every time I drive under a bridge, I think about running my car into the cement. I'm not kidding. She wasn't expecting that. She didn't know what to say. So then she looked at him and she said, you matter. His eyes welled with tears. He said, thank you, and walked away. I first told this story about the signs in 2020. Since that time, now in 2023, there are signs in all 50 states, 26 countries in several languages. In 6 years, the Don't Give Up Signs movement has shared 1.4 million messages of hope and love. After telling this story, I was moved to order some signs myself, and I did. I shared some on the Nextdoor app with my neighbors. I gave some to my daughter. And I put one in my yard, and I had several, so then I could go and change the message every once in a while. It was just this summer. I was mowing, and there was my sign out there, and I started thinking, oh gosh, it's been up there a long time. And I hope the neighbors don't mind. It's been a long run. It's been a good run. But I didn't do anything. I was just thinking about taking it down. A little while later, I was working in the house on my computer, and I heard talking outside. And I peeked out my window, not wanting to disturb anybody. I just peeked out, and there was a woman standing by my sign, and she was posing these two little children, one on each side of the sign, and taking their picture. I was so pleased. But what I absolutely did not expect was the thank you note I found that she left on my porch a few days later. I'm going to read it to you. Hi, I love your yard signs. I'm part of a 12-step fellowship, like AA. I've taken pictures of your signs with my niece and nephew standing by them and texted those photos to hundreds of newcomers and others struggling with addiction. And they have been the catalyst for hope that have helped these souls stay clean another day. Just wanted you to know what a true blessing you and your signs have been to so many all around the country, giving hope to the hopeless. Blessings. I didn't expect the note, and I was totally unprepared for the waves of emotion that swept over me after I read it. I cried more than once, loudly and long. And it was just the thought that this one little thing that I did could have a positive effect on so many people. It just blew me away. It's like Amy Wolf says, we are all in this together. This life is too hard and too messy to do alone. Don't give up. Trouble in mind, I'm blue, but I won't be blue always, 'cause the sun's gonna shine in my back door someday. Thank you. Oh, and please, on the way out, if you want to find some wristbands or buttons, take them with you. Want to speak something?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful.